Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. I'm Gavin Schall. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Fox Sports' NBA reporter, Yaron Weitzman, who literally wrote the book on Joel Embiid. I think you know what we're going to talk about next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because we are now available wherever you can get your podcast and, of course, on YouTube. And if you want to become one of my best friends, then join the club of every day. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit that notifications bell so you never, ever miss an episode. And be sure to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. But who's shilling for subs? I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And I'll call my shot. This is one of the best episodes we've done, not only this summer, but I'll say of the year. Yaron Weitzman is a super fun guy to talk to, exceptionally good at his job. And honestly, like in terms of people who cover the Philadelphia 76ers, along with our own Devon Givens and Keith Pompey over at Locked On, just flat out one of the best to do it, one of the most plugged in. So it was really, really cool to get his insight on Joel Embiid's comments, the whole situation, when a deal could go down, what it would look like, and some thoughts on the Knicks offseason. I won't hold this up any further. Let's get into it right now with Yaron. All right, guys, as promised, we are joined by Yaron Weitzman, who covers the NBA and does an incredible job of it for Fox Sports. He's also the author, which is really very relevant to our conversation today, of Taking to the Top, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the most audacious process in the history of professional sports. And Yaron, you got to know the guy we're talking about, Joel Embiid, decently while writing this book. And he came out with a quote yesterday that read, "I just want to win a championship, whatever it takes, whether it's Philly or anywhere else." I'll leave it open-ended. What did you make of that?
Also, thanks for having me on. I've heard people say they're not surprised. I was a little surprised. Not that Embiid might be getting antsy about the situation in Philly for all the reasons that I'm sure we'll talk about, but that, anyone listening to this is well aware of. But I tweeted this yesterday. Embiid's somebody, he's really smart, and Embiid knows when he says things, he does them. He says things on purpose. He's not somebody who just lets things slide. And him saying that, like, he knows what he's saying. And I mean, I know he's tried he's tried walking it back. I don't know, it's a troll campaign. His Twitter account's been a little weird. I think Maury tweeted a little bit. I think I saw Sixers PRP. I don't know. There's been a whole troll thing. I'm not fully buying that. I don't know. That would be a really long game. I'm not buying that Embiid on Thursday in an interview on the conference, like, drop that. And if you listen and watch the quote, like, it doesn't seem premeditated to some kind of long game. When he count down 5 days, I guess now we're 4 days away from whatever this thing is. So yeah, I was a little surprised by that he would feel a need to to me, that's him trying to put pressure or just get his opinion out there. And I'm a little surprised that he did that. He's mostly stayed away from that stuff during off seasons. He does them after the season. He'll criticize decisions, and after decisions are made, he'll often criticize them or express what he wished would happen. But we haven't seen much of this from him during off-season periods.
Do you think it is kind of explicitly Harden related, like either find a way to keep this guy, or I guess in my opinion, more likely like find a way to get this guy off the team and bring in something else good?
That's a good question. I guess I'll preface all this. Like, I don't know, right? I haven't obviously spoken to Embiid since, at all right now, on any of this stuff, and he hasn't done any media. We don't know. I don't know if it's explicitly Harden related. I think it's probably just explicitly team related. Like, just looking around, the team's not good enough. Even if they bring back Harden, you could probably question whether they are good enough. The Harden thing has kind of held them up a little bit in terms of their offseason decisions and movements and actions. And they've only lost guys. They haven't added any. I guess they've added Mobamba. I don't know. Who am I forgetting?
Patrick Beverly is the
Patrick Beverly, right? Yeah, like, these are the guys they're adding. Those are not difference makers, right? And Harden's a year older. So I think it's probably more just like, this team's not good enough. And I know that. That'd be my guess, just putting a little pressure on Daryl Morey. And that's, I mean, get this, to me, one of the most interesting things I find about the Harden situation and how the Sixers have handled it and how Morey has handled it is maybe this is a nerdy way to look at it, but if you look at Daryl Morey as somebody who's, whether you're a fan of his or not, think he's overrated or not, whatever, he is an important figure in NBA history. There's no arguing that. Like, he's somebody who historically is going to end up mattering when we look back at the NBA and who matters in terms of the NBA and where it's at. And this is an incredible bet. The way they handled the Harden stuff, he has put an incredible bet. He's betting on himself in a really interesting way that he can sort of extricate himself from the situation and put the team back on a path towards contention. And if he doesn't, he's going to be known as the guy who squandered this. Like, I don't think he wants to be the guy who traded Joel Embiid. Like, I don't think that's why he took the job in Philly, to be the guy who traded Joel Embiid and closed the championship window. So I find all that really interesting here as well.
No, I do as well. And I mean, he's obviously like revolutionized the game with how he invested in analytics, but he's also always been the 2 stars guy and wanting to build around 2 stars and like making plays for stars and being ambitious and getting those guys and not being on the other end of those deals and trading those types of guys away. But I'm in total agreement with you. Like, I think the notion of them just running back last year feels like almost like borderline, like crazy, like definition of insanity, I guess. Like is Harden, like all of a sudden in his mid-30s gonna be like, oh, you know what? That was stupid where I struggled in the playoffs for 12 years. Like, let me reverse that now. Like Joel, like, I guess the bet is that like he is for once like healthy, and maybe that is always the bet with Joel, that like he just has like a pristine postseason. And like whatever afflicted him in, like, I don't, maybe you have some insight into this, like in game 7, where he just didn't shoot very much, in game 6, where he couldn't get the ball down the stretch. And like, I guess maybe you're just arguing that like, all right, we think Tyrese Maxey could be an all NBA guy next year, but I don't see a world where this team is dramatically better, where you can argue like the rest of the East got at least a little bit better.
I'll say this. So I would say the arguments pro them getting better, it's another Maxey jump, which historically Maxey has shown somebody who gets better, he's got the talent and the work ethic. And I do feel we all, and myself included, we're overlooking, they have a new coach. And I would think they probably internally would grade that as and most people externally, but certainly internally, I think they would probably grade that as a big major upgrade. And maybe that could be a difference there. So I'm guessing those are the things they're talking about. And then internally, if we get Harden back. And the other thing is, like, Morey looks the game differently than honestly most of us do, right? The way a lot of us do. Like, I don't think, and I haven't spoken to him about it, but I don't think he would admit, and even off the record, like, I don't think he would admit that Harden has some sort of playoff problem, right? I think he would just say, there'd be rational explanations for the struggles that he would say and that he would see and list off. And to him, like, there's no reason that those can't disappear going forward, right? I don't agree with that necessarily. But I think he probably looks at that. So I'm guessing internally it's, let's get Harden back. We get a little Maxey jump, and we have a new coach, and that could be the difference there. And good enough to keep us in the game. And Morey's whole thing is about championship odds, right? He's always studying the championship odds. And I'm guessing, like, he would say entering the season, if we just run these guys back, our odds are good enough, and then we kind of tweak here. Who knows who gets disgruntled, or we could pick up whatever here and, make these little tweaks and things along the edges.
So I guess let's play this out going forward. Like, what would it actually take for Joel to ask out? Because I think you would know a lot better than I would, but I buy into the idea that like he doesn't want to be that guy who like pushes for a trade, and he does value what he's built in Philly. And it's like, it's so clear, like with like his loyalty to Hinkie early in his career, like he was all in. Like, he's like, I want to be Mr. Philadelphia. And like, to me, like, I think this is something that would happen next offseason. But is there a world like what would have to go so wrong for it to happen pre-trade deadline, even preseason this year? All right, guys. So let's just say this trade is ultimately going to happen. What would the Knicks have to give up? That sounds like it's ultimately going to be a gamble. And if you want to make a bet, take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to be the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and I promise super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. Personally, that is my favorite part. I don't want to wait. I just made some money. Let me have it. And there's no better place to do that and to bet on the MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200,000 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, there's always a world. I'm with you. I wouldn't say like, I guess I'll urinate on Knicks fans' excitement, right? But just I'd be stunned if within the next 2 weeks, next 2 months, you hear Embiid wants out, right? I'd be stunned. And by the way, and then I'll answer your question separately. Embiid could ask out tomorrow, and there's something we learned about Morey. Morey doesn't give a like that doesn't mean he's going to trade him, right? He's under contract. He's not going to trade somebody for low value, all that stuff. So that's the other thing to kind of file away here, right? That Morey, we've seen this already with Simmons, and we're going to see it now with Harden. And like, he's just not going to do the thing where, you ask for a trade, you're a superstar, I'll trade you at all. Where do you want to go? Perfect. We'll work that out. Right. So that's one. Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised. I mean, if you're asking me to make the case, like what happens for Embiid to ask out, it's that no Harden trade happens. He comes back, either he holds out or just dogs it completely. Maybe miss some games. They're teetering around 500 and just things aren't working well, and Embiid just getting frustrated. And the other thing that I think, this is not conjecture, but something I'm interested in following this year is Game 7, Embiid's Game 7 performance, and after that was one of the first times I think he can get a major blame for team's failure, and you're going to see, I think, the fans in Philly react a little differently. They have reacted differently to that, and I think we might see them react a little differently to him going forward. And I'm curious to see how that plays out in terms of if there's frustration from the Philly fans and how Embiid, who historically has not responded well to that stuff, he's had comments about like, Sixers fans want to trade me or whatever, and been a little sensitive on things like that. So that to me is another interesting little narrative to follow here and to pay attention to, is like his Game 7 stinker, Sixers fans being frustrated with that, and his reaction to their frustrations, that could poison the well a little bit. I'm curious to see how that plays out.
All right, so that leads well into a question that I'm going to preface by saying is probably a stupid question, almost definitely a stupid.
No
question,
such thing, remember?
But all right, well, let's call it playing devil's advocate.
I'll tell you if it is. Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're talking about the reigning MVP here. Is there a world where Joel Embiid asks out, and there's a case for the Knicks not going all in on him? I'll make it if you'll allow me to. He will turn 30 during next season. The last center to make an All-NBA team at age 30 or older was Marc Gasol, and that was 8 years ago. That was in 2015. He obviously has a pretty extensive injury history, as we've talked about. It's been highlighted in this podcast, many others in the past. He's never gotten out of the second round of the playoffs. So now you can argue that the Knicks team he would be coming to, and we could go over what the package would look like, even if like Morey like really robs the Knicks, is probably pretty clearly the second best team he's ever played on, outside of that 2019 Jimmy Butler Sixers team that lost on the crazy Kawhi shot to the eventual champions in the Toronto Raptors. I would also argue that Jalen Brunson would pretty clearly be like the second best second banana he's ever had. I mean, heck, you could argue Butler was the best player on that team. All that being said, like, is it ultimately a reasonable bet that he's the number one guy on a championship team into his early 30s? Because I think the deal you're making would kind of necessitate that is the bet you're making, with the caveat that the Knicks would be ultra deep and maybe they wouldn't need the traditional like Jokic level, Giannis level impact, and someone like Embiid who's maybe in the playoffs. And again, feel free to push back on that, because obviously there's a caveat that he's like never at quite 100% in the playoffs. Like whether you want to use that as a pro or a con, like would that be enough for the Knicks to make a title run? And using the Daryl Morey logic, would that give you enough title equity if you're a Knicks fan?
I hear you. I disagree. So here, I'll disagree in two parts. One is I can make the argument, why I'm not going to make the argument why adding an MVP is good, right? Because like everyone who would disagree with you knows that. I'll make a different argument. Like, to me, it's what are we doing here, right? Like, what's the point of all this? So yeah, you can do the spinning assets down and keep playing for the future and waiting for the next thing and all that. But to me, that's not the point, especially when you're already good and when you already have a guy like Jalen Brunson. And as Knicks fans listening to this know, you want to take advantage of him on the current contract, with a 2-year window now, basically, before he opts out and gets whatever all the money that Leon Rose can pay him over and under the table. So to me, it's just like, yeah, you can make the case in terms of from an asset standpoint, you can kind of make the case. But to me, that's like too, I'll say hinky-ish. Hinkie wouldn't believe that. Like Hinkie's whole thing was superstars. I think most of the guys who believe in assets are always like, no, you get the top 3 player, like one of those guys who is the best player on championship level team. And I know Embiid's had his playoff struggles, but he's still the MVP. Like you just do that. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work or whatever. But just that's the whole point of this, right? Is to get guys like that to be in the circle of contention. So that'd be my biggest thing. As opposed to, I can make the case basketball wise why it would be good, but no one needs to hear me make that case. To me, it's like, what's the point? The point is to try to win titles, and when you have the opportunity, or if you have the opportunity to add somebody like Joel Embiid, and who puts you in that, thrusts you into contention, into a new stratosphere where you weren't before, I think you have to do that.
Yeah, I, to be clear, 100% agree with you. And I think in some ways, as much of a bet as it is an Embiid, it's a bet on Jalen Brunson and what he did this postseason, closing out games against a team that like we're killers in the Miami Heat. And he was going at points 3-on-1, 4-on-1, dropping 41 on the road in that game 6. Like I'm okay going to war with that guy. And I think there's a world where like Embiid is a guy who like wins you some games in a series and is like consistently at 26, 13 and a couple of assists. And like maybe it's some games bigger than that. But like when you're looking to close out games, I think Brunson is again more capable of that than anyone Embiid's ever played with outside of possibly Butler in 2019. That's the bet you're making. And you're also making the bet on keeping some depth. So to me, the package would, my friend and someone, I think whose podcast you've also been on, Jonathan Macri, he made like a good case for it in his newsletter today. I tend to agree with him. I think it would be something along the line of RJ Barrett, probably Quentin Grimes instead of Emmanuel Quickley, because he's just a much more natural fit with Tyrese Maxey, Mitchell Robinson, and then a bunch of unprotected picks, maybe some pick swaps, probably all the picks that the Knicks have from other teams, with the Knicks maybe retaining 1 or 2 future picks that they could do for one more deal going forward. And you're kind of left with a core of Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, Joel Embiid, Emmanuel Quickley, DiVincenzo, Hart, which sounds like, frankly, an awesome team to me. What do you think the trade would look like, given that the Knicks would have to beat out essentially the rest of the NBA to go get Joel Embiid?
Yeah, that sounds about it. I mean, I'll simplify it. Like if Daryl Morey, again, like I don't think you would trade Embiid for a. I don't know. That whole thing, we can talk about that. I don't know how to play that one or think about that. But like, hey, fine. If he was on board with trading Embiid and for some reason want to do it for a package of assets and not like, spin things 3 ways or try to get stars back and remain in contention for whatever, he's getting everything. Like he's getting from the Knicks, like he's getting everything he wants. He's getting every single pick that they can send, gone. Yeah, they can argue, they can haggle over things. But like in the end, he's getting everything. So if he wants Grimes and again, I don't know the cap stuff. I have to look at that. But like if you want to Grimes and Quickly, I think you'd have to end up doing that as well, right? And I think once you're in it, you're just in it. That's my opinion on that one.
Yeah, that hurts to hear, but you're probably right. All right, moving on from Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. How do you feel about the Knicks offseason so far? Like it's this weird confluence of like, oh, they're finally like kind of doing the thing everyone asked of them, which is like they built like a young, successful team and they're not immediately blowing it up. And that's caused some agita amongst Knicks fans, some support from others. How do you feel about it?
No, I think it's good. Like it's a little boring, right? It's not so exciting, but that's cool. Again, take this from somebody who like didn't love their offseason last season, and I was completely wrong because I didn't know Jalen Brunson was an all-NBA level player. I'm convinced the Knicks didn't know that either, by the way, but that's besides the point. Well, I'm not convinced that they knew that. How about that? It's a better way to phrase that. Yeah, they're making the right moves. I'm not worried about the power forward thing. I know that's something that Knicks fans are like, I don't know. I don't think backup 4. If you're worried about like a backup 4, then that's, I don't know. That's like the nerdiest of nerdy fandom problem.
First world problem, right?
Not even anywhere. Like not even. It's like that's 19 or 2004 problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like not anymore. Yeah, I'm curious to see the rotation. That's something I'm really curious about to see with all the wings there. I'm curious to see what RJ looks like this season after up and down. I was gonna say year, but really 4 year, whatever career, right? Just like where you don't even know what to make of it. And at some point, it is like we're very close. I think this is probably it. Like. You are what you are, right? I think we're basically there. I'll give him like one more half a season to, was there growth in the playoffs last year? Otherwise, when you look at the clean the glass, percentile, and it's all for shooting, and it's blue every single season and every single stat. It's like, okay, at some point we can say you got to work on your finishing, and it's actually, no, you're just not a good finisher, right? You're just not a great shooter. Doesn't mean he's not a valuable player, but that's no interested in. Randall obviously is a big one. Which Randall we getting? I have never been a Randall fan. In terms of on the court play, in terms of his demeanor and leadership. Obviously, when he puts the ball, he can be a great scorer. I don't know what you do with Randall because he's like one of these guys that's probably impossible to trade because you're never going to get fair. He's an all-NBA guy, but nobody else really wants him. You're not going to get fair market for him. To me, I think I guess it's about growth. Quickly and Grimes and Barrett. Let's see what they three of them are and who's what. Quickly had to again step back in the postseason. Let's see if last season was more was sort of a hot streak, and his defense is great also. So I think that's something that can be consistent. But see what those guys sort of those three sort of solidify as, and see also, we have to always look at what Jalen Brunson's going to be year two as being the guy. Like if scouting reports and things like that change on him, I think he's fantastic. I think the Knicks are. I'm going to say lucky. Maybe lucky is the wrong phrase because he's clearly a guy they targeted, right? Like that was the guy they wanted. So results, got to give them credit, right? They got a great player and a great leader who everyone loves. I think the luck is that he was somebody given the family ties. Like he could have been a bum and an awful human being, and they were still going to target him, right? And it's the lucky part is the fact that this guy who they made sure they were going to get is an A+ in all these categories, and that's. Yeah, incredibly fortunate, and really to me changes the feeling and trajectory of the franchise. I don't know, what's the last example of? Is it you? I don't know who. When you go back as a guy who was this good and this much of a foundational leadership piece. I don't even know who the last guy the Knicks had like this was. I guess they were obviously Houston this Freewell year. Carmelo, I guess we'll go to Carmelo. He was that good, and I don't know if he was a leader the same way, but just Brunson, it's the most exciting thing that I think the Knicks have had happen to them in about a decade, right? And to me, that changes the whole trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, and his Cantor aside, no, I'm kidding. I think since Patrick Ewing, he's pretty clear cut, that guy. And I'm entirely with you on Quickly and RJ are probably my two biggest questions coming into the year. How it's fascinating with RJ, right? Because everyone got so excited about his postseason, myself included, and I thought the process was significantly better, and particularly in that Cavs series, his ability to just bully Karis LeVert and make Cleveland not having Isaac Okoro on the court. That was really exciting. And then you look at the numbers, and the shooting percentage is the same. The 3-point percentage was better. Even the assist numbers were exactly the same. And Emmanuel Quickly, who was terrible in the postseason, Quentin Grimes, who did not shoot well in the postseason, their on-offs were still dramatically better than RJ Barrett. And there's a world where I would posit the best version of the Knicks is maybe starting Quickly at the 2 and Grimes at the 3. And as undersized as they would be, that's just putting your best players on the court. And Quickly, I think the fundamental issue there is why it's ultimately he is kind of I hate to put this in such graphic terms, but almost like a basketball sheep being raised for slaughter is he I think is destined to be a good starter somewhere. He was 24-5-4 as a starter with 47% from the field, 40% from 3, 85% from the line, and great defense. And I'm curious your opinion on this. Is there a world where the Knicks would ever try him and Brunson together? Because I honestly the numbers were fantastic last year. Those were some of the best lineups in the league. He's good enough defensively against most teams, but you can always argue you're going to hit a matchup in the playoffs, particularly the Celtics, where you're going to be made to pay for having that little size on the perimeter.
They should. I mean, that's another thing. First of all, that was the ironic part about Quickly, right? That he was in 6-man of the year candidate, but his best numbers were when most of his better numbers were when he started, right? That was one of the ironic parts. Related to that is Josh Hart, who we haven't mentioned, who I think actually Thibodeau fell in love with for good reasons, right? Obvious reasons and valid reasons. But I think he's also he was a little overexposed in the playoffs. So the bench is a perfect role for him, right? That's a great role for him coming off the bench, and you could close games with him, whatever. But I think I would like him coming off the bench if I was a Knicks fan. And if I was the Knicks, I think I would push that and starting Quickly. Whether Thibodeau will do, I don't know. Sometimes we know he defaults to defense. We know size is something that matters to him, right? So that'd be sort of my questions there.
How do you we can wrap up on this, but how do you feel about Tibbs, and what do you think the Knicks have to accomplish this season? Like, this sounds like I think he's in a really good spot with Leon Rose. I'll start off by saying that, but like, is there a world where like the Knicks like take a step back this year, like just like they did after their last great season in 2021, and he's on the outs? Because I think people like I don't even have to say people, I can just say myself, like, had real issues with some of the stuff he did in the playoffs and some of like the progress he seemed to make in the regular season. He walked back with, to your point, like playing RJ and Josh Hart down the stretch of playoff games. And we would watch, like, there was a reason there were 4 guys on Jalen Brunson. They were not being guarded. And even when Quentin Grimes wasn't hitting shots, like both statistically and eye test wise, I thought his impact was evident just having another shooter out there. Nominally, they got DiVincenzo for that reason, but positionally, it still doesn't line up for them to have enough shooting out there. And that doesn't, like, Tibbs seems to prize size and physicality over that. And I think it could doom them again. That's a microcosm of these issues, but like, what is like the big picture way where this doesn't work for Tibbs? And I guess like, if you want to finish up on this, like, what are fair expectations for this team this year?
So here's the thing with the Knicks. Tibbs was almost fired. Like, I think it's been reported publicly.
Also, yeah,
right?
I mean,
he was like,
Ian Begley has like essentially come out and said like if he didn't switch that 9-man rotation and it worked, like he would have been gone.
Yeah, there was I don't want to. Maybe it was Cleveland. Like, he was calling for. I think I even wrote this in a story. Like, he called. I think I wrote this. Yeah, he at one point in the season he called somebody like, they're gonna fire me, so I'm gonna play my guys or whatever. Like, he knew he was about to be fired, right? So for somebody who's about to be fired, I can't say like, oh, he's like, there's no chance he gets fired again. Like, he's completely protected, right? And him and the members of front office he haven't been his biggest fans, right? Not Leon Rose, other people. I would assume by this point, I think Tibbs has probably overcome that or solidified his standing. I mean, two playoff runs in 3 years is in Knicks land nothing to laugh at, like, nothing to be ignored. I think Tibbs and Dolan have had a decent, like, Dolan is around or whatever sometimes, and I think Tibbs, does a good job. Serving the owner there, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, what could go wrong? But if they lose 10 out of 12 games to start the season, I mean, if they start off 3-11, how things go in Knicks land and Madison Square Garden, right? The knives come out, and you could always be in trouble. I'd be pretty surprised. Again, I'm not this repeat. I think Jalen Brunson is sort of the insurance here, right? That, like, it wasn't all smoke and mirrors, right? Maybe 2 years ago it felt a little like that. Last year it did not the same thing, because again, you have an all NBA guy. And if you have Julius Randle, let's say regular season Julius Randle, right? Like, that's 2 top 30 players, and I'm being conservative there, right? Like, your floor should be pretty high with those 2 guys in tow. And the depth that they have. So I think they'll be fine. Reasonable expectations. I mean, getting at, like, I think reasonable is like, if you're a Knicks fan, this is your current team. If you win a playoff series, you should be pretty happy, right? I think the Cavs will be better. Let's assume, maybe I should, like, Dame ends up in Miami, Milwaukee, Boston. I know Philly's a bit of a mess, but just who else am I forgetting?
Cleveland.
Cleveland, right? They're going to be better. Like, again, I think reasonable. Yeah, like, you want to say conference final to be like the Super Bowl, but I think, like, let's win a playoff series. That would be my thing on next year. If they win a playoff series and they look better, maybe a competitive second round, like, that to me is will be reasonable expectations, and ones that if they fulfilled all those, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I really look towards, like, Randall just, like, not, like, stepping off the seesaw, having the same season. Mm-hmm. And RJ quickly and Grimes all making meaningful steps forward. And I think that combined with DiVincenzo, like, I think there's a world where they are a fantastic regular season team. 56 win pace post Josh Hart. Part of that was Grimes shooting really well. Part of that was Brunson stepping up to another level. But I could see them, like, finishing this year as a top 3 seed, maybe even, like, with something bad happening in Boston, Milwaukee, a top 2 seed. Whether, like, how that translates to the playoffs, I have no idea. I'm with you. I think that is totally reasonable, but you know what? That should have Knicks fans pretty optimistic. And we just said it, Joel Embiid's coming in a year, so we can wait on that. But Yaron Weitzman, thank you so much for your time. Can you tell everyone one final time where they can find all your great work and where they can buy your book, which is fantastic?
Sure. Check my stuff out at Fox Sports. You can follow me on Twitter. I put a Threads account. Did you guys make Threads accounts? I'm out. I can't do. I made one.
It's too much for me. I haven't done it yet. When the day Twitter shuts down, I'll go there.
That's what it is. I need one place. I don't care where it is. Just tell me the one place where everybody is, and I'll be there. So right now, that's Twitter still. The book is where books are sold and all that stuff. You want to learn a little, if you want to get excited for Joel Embiid. I did, if I may say so myself, there's some good reporting on his backstory and who he is as a person. I think, if you're interested in learning about him, you'll gain some insight from there.
Must read for all Knicks fans. You heard it here first. Sure thing. Joel Embiid to the Knicks, your own. Thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks.
Thanks, man.